All right, joining us now on Night Shift. He played at UCF from 2011 to 2015, and he was quite literally, not just figuratively, but quite literally in the middle of a real boom time for UCF football, moving from at the time when the Knights moved from Conference USA to the American, 2012, 2013, 2014, and is still here in the state of Florida and is working on his own project, which we're going to talk about here, and his own business to discuss a little bit and plenty more from UCF football. Joey Grant, number 55, center for UCF back. Geez, Joey, it wasn't all that long ago, was it? Was it really? Oh my gosh, 10 years since
10 years.
14 team, huh?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and good to be here. Love talking all things nice. It was quite a while ago, 10 years. There was an action-packed couple years there. We had a BCS Bowl, a couple conference championships, and some historic runs. So it was a really fun time to be back in the to be in the program, and there's definitely no shortage of memories to go with it. So excited to chat all things today.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
we're gonna hit up some of that, but I wanted to talk real quick about. I was reached out to by our mutual friend Todd Graisley, and I've known Todd for 20 years since he was a student, and talking about GMTM and this project that you have going with also with Shaquem Griffin. Tell us about that real quick. What are you up to right now, and what do you have
Yep.
in the pipeline?
So first off, thanks even for asking, and I'll go even higher level to make it relevant for the Knight fans listening in. But so I played for the Knights. I went from a defensive lineman to playing center, and a part of that was, my roommate was Blake Bortles. We were really close, but also tangibly skills wise. I wasn't kind of a TJ Watt or JJ Watt freak athlete. I was pretty mobile, very strong. But I was able, over the course of my career, to understand my skills, my intellect, the way I could move laterally, made the switch to center. So had that kind of understanding that as an athlete, you're a lot more than just a position or even just a sport. I mean, I was a three-sport athlete. And then after I finished playing at UCF, I was very involved with recruiting and on the personnel side. And on the transition from Coach O'Leary to Coach Frost, I was pretty formidable helping put that initial recruiting class together with Mackenzie Milton. So I was able to see really the entire recruiting landscape and how athletes were discovered. And right now, within the current infrastructure of where youth sports is at today, it's very fragmented. It's very archaic. Athletes are you have to pick a club sport, or you essentially have to choose a career when you're very young. And you get limited in these very confined ecosystems, and you're on one system just to get your scholarship or take the traditional path. And we believe there's going to be a different future in sports, partly from my experience as an athlete, playing three different sports coming up, transitioning my position, really to mirror where could I extend my career the farthest. Obviously would have loved to play in the NFL, but some injuries got in the way. But that's essentially kind of what we're doing now at GMTM is we're fixing the discovery mechanisms for athletes where you don't have to be confined in this pay to play system. And more freely, you can have your videos and your information be seen widely by coaches and scouts from all over. And so we've been doing this now for almost 5 years. We work with the Olympics. We work with professional sports organizations who are all selecting athletes. Think of, instead of in-person tryout like everybody's used to back in the day, we're digitizing this. We're making this your highlight videos or specific videos that can showcase what you can do to really change the game for athletes and scouts. And with this event, we have an event coming up, and I'm going back home to the indoor. But this will be, going from just kind of a technology platform that is used right now by athletes in these organizations to the first event itself. And an event and in person is completely, it is sports, is that in-person presence. So that's what really excited for. But to boil it down, really it's just helping athletes to get discovered and helping coaches and scouts find athletes, nationally.
I was reading about it, and I'm really excited about and intrigued about these kinds of things. Not just as a dad, I have, and my son currently plays soccer and basketball.
Yep.
Even though he's not, nearly at an age to get ready to even think about, college. But,
Yep.
I'm a big fan of the Olympics, and I can recall so many stories about, athletes who were doing one thing in college and then transitioning to another sport because there was an opportunity there and their skill set fit that sport. I think a great example of that, for example, I can distinctly remember, and this is a little afield, but Herschel Walker,
Yeah.
toward the middle end of his NFL career, moonlighted with the U.S. bobsled team in the
Oh yeah.
Winter Olympics, which was, I don't think too many people remember that, but I distinctly remember that. I was like, well, that's interesting. That makes sense. I mean, Herschel Walker's a tremendous athlete. I mean, I don't think there was anything that he could have done that he wouldn't have been good at. But are you guys trying to kind of find a similar situation there with, hey, maybe, there are these diamonds in the rough and there are these sports that have a demand. So let's link them up, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit more foundational, right? To me, that's something that's very organic, and to me, that's how sports should play. Herschel Walker is a very talented human being. He can probably do anything in the world, and he's probably going to pursue just what he has, what he's aware to. And for whatever reason, he became aware of bobsled, caught interest, and was a high performer. And so, really the change we're trying to make is over the last 30, 40, 50 years, each club, right? So you mentioned the three sports that your kids play. Each one of those sports is completely different. And as your kid gets older, you're going to get more internal pressures from each sports ecosystem that's going to say, hey Jeff, we got to stop playing the basketball, or we got to stop playing the soccer, and we need to start focusing. And because the club teams need their fees, and you got to travel for the tournaments and the amount of games that they play. And we're really looking deep into that, and we're looking past just where the industry is, and we're saying, no, hold up a second. Jeff, what are your kids' skills? What does your kid love doing? And then let's really map out and let each age and each stage of their athletic career be what that is, but create more awareness. And so as an athlete goes from these critical years of 12, 13, 14, 15 into more of the 16, 17, 18, we can get out of this world of this Willy Wonka lottery ticket NIL world of, hey, I'm training my whole career for this one shot. That's not what sports is. That's not how you excel in sports. And so really we're challenging the entire status quo of where the sports market is today. And we're really just kind of starting top down. We're starting with the athletes that the industry is leaving behind, which is high school athletes over 18, between the transfer portal, NIL, all of these very gray area ways that the sports industry is morphing. It's leaving athletes behind, and it's going to continue to leave athletes behind over the next decade, unless there's a stark change. And we want to be that change that really kind of cuts through the noise of, again, the infrastructure and really a lot of the middlemen. It's all of the gatekeepers and all of the people in sports that want to keep each sport its own, have their little piece of the pie, when in reality, the pie, whether people like it or not, is the pie's out of the oven, and this thing is going to get very, very large. And that's what sports is. Brent, you mentioned the Olympics, right? It's where the world comes together. Sport is what every person, people estimate over 50% of everybody in the US is playing some sort of sport, intentionally or recreationally. And so how can you better align this with an opportunity marketplace, which is what sports is? An organization, brands, or athletes on either side who are both asking the question, what is the next best thing that I can play? Where can I find success?
Cool. We'll come back to the search for greatness combine, which you're doing with Shaquem in a little bit. But I wanted to
Sure.
transition a little bit and talk about, I think what you're doing now is a reflection of how you were as a player at UCF, right? I mean, you found your niche by trying different things. You came to UCF out of Lake Brantley. You were initially a defensive, and you were on the scout team as a defensive lineman in your redshirt year as a freshman in 2011.
Started 6 games. Hey, people forget. I got the nickel 3. These are the times where defenses were changing, but I would come in on those pass rush downs, and that's not where the fans will remember me, because again, I was good, not great. I wanted to be the Bruce Miller. Wasn't totally Bruce. I don't know where my career would have gone, but like you said, was able to be able to see where our team strengths were. We had Jordan Ray leaving, who was an incredible center, made that
Yeah.
transition to defensive line. My roommates Blake were very close, and when I was able to even get a glimpse of offense, where for the fans it's much more intellectual, game plan oriented versus defense, which is more reaction oriented, kind of
Looking for
looking at
cues
different
and things
tendon.
like that.
Exactly, but I'm not able to really sit down and put all the work in, or like you would an offensive game plan, where you're
Mhm.
really understanding how all of the chess pieces move, and you're kind of white. You're the ones moving them. You're forcing the reactions to happen, and for me, that you know created a new horizon, essentially, where I could grow and accelerate and keep growing as an athlete, which is the most important thing. Period. Is,
Yeah.
are you getting better as an athlete every day in what you're doing? Yes or no? And as much as you can answer yes to that question, you're going to find a lot of success.
I've always believed that, everyone says that the most important player on the field in football is the quarterback, but I've always thought that the next closest guy behind him was the center, because you have to you're aiding in making those decisions, and a lot of those decisions prior to the snap you are making on their behalf. Just take me inside your helmet on like a normal play. What decisions, what things does a center have to do that is really important to the execution of any particular play, but maybe fans don't fully realize?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. And we could sit for hours and talk about just that one alone, but I'll give you the skinny of it is really you're kind of the coach and the leader on the field. So your quarterback's going to be interfacing with the offensive coordinator. He's getting the play call in, and I'm kind of getting everything else ready, in the
Mhm.
huddle. I'm making sure everybody's lined up. I'm calling the huddle, even the attention to detail, like there needs to be 4 yards if you're huddling from where the ball is to the huddle. Little stuff like that gets to be, very, very important from a play-by-play basis, even though it might not look like it. But then we're getting the huddle, we're breaking, and as soon as the huddle breaks, I'm immediately scanning the defense. And really, you look from the front back. So you want to ask the question, how many down linemen are there? And that could change depending on the game plan. A down lineman could be a person with their hand in the dirt, or it could not be, depending on
Mhm.
who you're playing. But I'm assessing, who are the down linemen? Who are the linebackers? What does the secondary look like? What does the shell of the secondary look like in terms of pressures that might come? And then, depending on if it's a run or a pass, if it's a run, I'm immediately what is called Mike IDing. I'm essentially stamping a point in the defense, where we're going to say, hey, this is the person in the middle. That can change based off a game plan. And then, based off my call, now everybody that extends outside the ball, they now can have an association, which essentially will shift depending on who I say is the center of that defense. Now I'm also helping to make calls. So sometimes tackles or tight ends, hey Joey, what is this? What is this? And
Yeah.
you might have to relay that out. And then on the pass side, it's protection. So making sure our quarterback is clean. Usually there's, I won't get too detailed, but there's a slide side of a pass protection, and then what's called a man side of a protection. So you're setting all of these different things in accordance with what the called protection is, but then importantly, the defense. And then ball is snapped and we're off and running. But all of that is happening, I would say, between like, the play clock, right? A 5 to 15 second time period once you break the huddle.
Yeah, and that takes study and time, and it really is, to quote Yogi Berra, 90% mental and the other half physical, right? I mean,
Well,
it's
I'll tell
really
you, there's
something.
no worse feeling than breaking a huddle and looking at a defense where you don't know what's going on. And I can
Yeah,
also
I
say
can
that I've
ima
done
I can
that.
imagine, because some of these defenses that you see, and I'm sure you did in
Yeah.
your you would come out and see something like, "What is this?"
Oh yeah.
We didn't
Oh
see
yeah.
that in the film
Well,
room.
now with the Vikings, Brian Flores, a lot of these pressure defense, whereas they'll send anybody. We'd be playing FIU or Houston, and there are these defenses that are called radar, and this is where you throw out what a defense looks like, and it's
Mhm.
people that are standing up, they're just walking around, and so think of like a hodgepodge of people moving around, and you're trying to sort out who's who. So it can get tricky, but that's the fun of it, and that is the mental side that not a lot of people get to see.
You were the anchor of a unit that, for a stretch of time at UCF, Well, let me just read this out here. All right. So starting in 2012, which was UCF's last year in Conference USA, through 2014, which was your junior year, your last full year, because 2015 there were some injuries.
Yep.
You guys over 3 seasons went 31-9,
Yep.
22-2 in conference play, 2-1 in bowl games, and won 2 conference titles, almost a third. And I'm still bitter about that game at Tulsa, and I'm sure probably you are too. I swear to God, on that punt return, somebody jumped off the bench to tackle a guy.
I still
But
won't visit Tulsa to this day. I
yeah,
can't even go near the stadium.
we're gonna be old in the home, and we're gonna be like cursing Tulsa from here on out. The rest of us, some of us old hats, but
Yes.
that group, that unit, I was thinking back to, you had a lot of consistency. Like you said, Blake Bortles was your roommate. And then you transitioned to Justin Holman in 2014, who was a remarkably talented player in his own right. When you think back on that stretch and what you guys were able to do, what set that group apart in your mind from the rest of the competition? What made you guys great?
I think leadership. I think leadership and I think being unique. And I think about that a lot now, building a company and being in the world is things really stand out when they're different. And we were just a different ball club. I mean, we were, Coach O'Leary, we can back and romanticize a lot. And I love Coach a lot, but, don't get it twisted. We were playing in the Junction Boys type day and age in 2013. There's Instagram and we're basically living in a Junction Boys world in terms of just the difficulty of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what really allowed us to thrive is we had leaders who were able to learn that system. It was so different. It was so difficult, but then build the mental strength, build the being formidable just as athletes, as players to go into any environment. And through that time as a collective group, we built confidence. And I think if you ask Shaquem, who played on both the 27 and those Fiesta Bowl, everybody that is associated with UCF around that time will tell you that our team was just different in every shape, every way. The coaches on the staff, the players to this day. And I think it was just a different time of college football, a different moment. And, I can say guys like myself, Blake, Terrence Plummer, like we just bought in. And we were so bought in and we wanted to win so badly that we did a lot of things that I don't think any other college football teams do, frankly. The way we approached film, the way that we worked in practice. And so it was a lot, but that's what led to the success. And I think, I always think about, other things of, just different moments or people we could have played or ways things that, could have shaken out a little bit differently. But it was such a special group, and we still are to this day, which is how, me and Shaquem and Jordan McRae will be there, and Torian Wilson and Terrence Plummer. All of these people are coming to Search for Greatness event, and they're working it. And that's partly because we're still brothers to this day, and we're all still talking in it, supporting, and at this point trying to help shape the industry, right? Which is what's on every fan's mind, which is what is this going to look like in 5 to 10 years? But 10 years ago, it was a different time, and we were able to rise to the challenge. And I'm glad that we're remembered as a team that stood out for sure.
Give me your best story, memory, recollection from that particular period in time.
There's too many.
I know there are so many.
Well, just to go off that, right? Like, again, this is 2013, and we played Louisville. And Louisville's a top 10 ranked team.
Yep.
And Coach O'Leary was, again, the type of coach where he's going to look for anything to be able to make stuff harder, create more of an advantage in the long term versus the short term. But we were in full pads that Louisville practice, and he got, hey, we need to go full pads. We had a great practice. He said, hey, we're going to go full pads the whole week. So we went full pads the whole week. Then we beat Louisville and had a historic
Friday night.
win there.
Yeah, the touchdown pass to Jeff got and still UCF tied that as this year the biggest comeback in school history.
Yeah, no, that was a game plan where we trust the process. But after that game, Coach O'Leary was so kind of superstitious about it, we were full pads the entire rest of the season. So when people have in their mind the Fiesta Bowl season, think about the Knights every single practice. Well, most teams were in skelly pads and pajamas. We were in full pads every single practice, hitting. And so when you watch these games and you say, hey, well, the cardiac Knights, they waited to the last minute, we were pretty tired, if I'm being honest with you. But through that, we were able to grind it out. And again, we knew what it took. We knew what it took to win. And that's what we did, as you pointed out. We were able to win a lot. And luckily, we've been able to keep a lot of the winning culture, still infused with the program. And hopefully we can continue building off that.
When I think of 2013, yeah, obviously the Louisville game, everyone remembers that and just that spectacular comeback. I think obviously a lot of people remember Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl and them being such a huge favorite, and then us hanging 52 on them. But I think of the Temple game, and because it was one of those games where on paper Temple had no business keeping the game that close. PJ Walker, who was in the NFL, was a freshman. And
Hassan Reddick, who's making news for the Jets now, but he was there.
And Matt Rule was just making a name for himself too as a coach. When you think back to, and everyone remembers, of course, the JJ Wharton catch, but I remember the drama of that game where to find a way to win a game where it looked like nothing was going right. What was, take me on the sideline into the huddle in that kind of game. How did you guys manage to figure out a way to win that game and keep that season alive?
Yeah, I mean, I would throw the Temple game honestly in with the Memphis game. People forget, but we were losing to Memphis, and Brashad, Blake threw, it was 4th and 11, and Blake threw a 15-yard post on the backside to Brashard just to convert the 4th down before then stand back, had the fumble, hit the guy to have the fumble to then.
Everyone remembers that one, but yeah.
Well, it is, my point is that every away game, our mindset was we were 100% going to win the game, period. B, this team's not very good. Why are we not just really, beating them?
Why
pretty
are they
good?
not folding?
Well, we got everybody's best. And we got very complex game planning. Everybody hit us with something that was different than we saw. And so, there were all of those games where first quarter doing pretty good, second, third quarter, a lot of adjustments, fourth quarter, let's figure out how to win this ball game. But very physical conference, very physical games, all of those. And they were just kind of grinder games. And it just kind of showed each person flashed in the moments at the right time. JJ and Blake on that throw and catch, like I said, stand back. I think there was like a Houston, Brandon Alexander batted a ball on the goal line. That was a 4th down for them to win. I mean, it was, USF game, Blake hitting Brashad for a 40-yard touchdown at the, last minute. It's every one of those away games. It came down to, hey, someone's got to make a play. And we were able to make that play in that split second. But they were even, I think, closer than the cardiac kind of name gives them granted, name for. But yeah, that is how I think is on one end, was the dominance of the Baylor game where, we're the largest underdogs ever in BCS history. And again, there was no doubt if you would have talked to us that we were going to win that game. But then at the same time, we're having to have last second, miracle one-handed catches to win against just middle of the road conference opponents. So
yeah. I think when I think of the Temple game, everyone remembers JJ. I think of that long pass to Rennell to put us in field goal range.
Yeah,
which was
and how he didn't score.
Yeah,
to this day, you can't be called speedy and get caught like that.
You guys get on him all the time for that, don't you? How did you not go there?
You got to take it to the house. No, we had Moffitt that year too, and Sean Moffitt didn't miss a field goal. So again, it's all of the unsung, heroes of the season. All of the, the deeper you go into the details, really, the more remarkable. Some of
and it starts coming. The names start coming back. Like I think of Jordan Ozaritis, who got the interception against South Florida to seal that game. That That was really, to me, that was like the birth of the war on I-4. Even though we played them 4 times previous, they
Yeah.
won all 4 of them. That was when we first played them on an equal footing.
Yeah, I
And
wore my helmet after the game was over. You know, I was not I was not going into the middle of that field with my helmet off. Let's just say
oh
that.
man,
That
yeah.
was
But one thing I wanted to ask you about that team too, and it's in particular that 3-year stretch.
mhm,
Your offensive staff was consistent the whole time. And I think that
yeah.
this is an underrated thing in college football now because, players aren't just moving around, coaches move around a lot. But it was Charlie Taff as the offensive coordinator. You had Sean Beckton, um, Danny Barrett was coaching running backs, and Brent Key, who's now the head coach at Georgia Tech, was your offensive line coach. What did that group and just the consistency of having those same 4 guys coaching you guys day in and day out do for you in terms of building your confidence and helping you, and helping kind of, those things just be not new that you
Yeah.
could build that confidence together as a unit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first off, Charlie Taff, rest in
God rest
peace.
him.
Love him.
Yeah.
Love him. But I think even to zoom it out wider, Jeff, I mean, those guys were with coach for 10 years. I mean, Brent
Mhm.
Key was a GA and a tight ends coach. Charlie Taff, all of these guys had known and been around coach. And I think Beck, obviously still there now. I just saw him 2 days ago. And
Yeah.
it's always great seeing him. But yeah, I
That's
think
he's like, it's like Hotel California for him. He can't leave.
oh no, he's stuck forever, and he should be. And I hope he'll continue impacting athletes that come through for a long time, and everybody will love him just like I do. He recruited me, but my point is those coaches really knew coach. They knew the system. They knew, there was no, sometimes new coaches, you get some internal kind of politicking going on, or people surprised about something was positioned this way. Everything was clear, all those offensive coaches, what their roles were. Coach Key, and myself, we were really able to own the run game. Blake and Coach Taff, through the air, and Coach Key and I and Coach Taff and Blake as well as with protection. So we were just so on the same page, not just from a coaching staff, but a relationship from the players to the coaching staff as well. And I think about all of those things because it's much more clear when you get into NFL type of locker rooms, but I mean, it really takes everybody being on the same page and aligned with what the game plan is, what are the nuances of these decisions that you need to make. And that's what winning looks like. And so I think for all of us, we were just all on the same page that when we walked into that building, we wanted to raise the bar and raise the standard. And I think it's a two-way thing. Coaches know when they see a guy like Blake or when they see guys like Brashad that they need to give those guys their best because of how dang talented they are, right? And then when those guys look around the locker room and they see each other, we got a real chance here. And that was the year. I mean, we were talking about that Fiesta Bowl a year before, right? We all knew what the stakes were. And I remember after Penn State or something, going around to every coach's staff room and saying, "Hey, undefeated BCS, baby." And that was kind of my joke and the thing I did Friday as we were going around. And every week I did it because every week that was what we were playing for. And so, I think that's just really what it takes is, yeah, the consistency these days are tough because there's so many moving pieces. But what I'm really passionate about is how do people just come together?
Mhm.
Regardless, who cares where you were yesterday, where you're going tomorrow? Can you be here now? And can you really care? And can you really make a difference? And that difference is palpable to the fans, right? And that's where the judgment should be because whatever's going on that fans or people can see, you just know whether things are clicking inside or whether they're not. And so, I think that's definitely in this day and age what people need to be aware of because of the change, because of the uncertainty. And it's not any one person's control, right? There's so many external factors. It's not just one program anymore. It's conferences and the NCAA and the media
Yeah.
contracts and this and then that. But at the end of the day, I just think it's still on the athletes and the coaches to come together and to put together winning efforts.
When I think of the Fiesta Bowl, and I remember telling my friends, so I couldn't make it out to Phoenix to go to the game, but I was watching with a bunch of really good friends of mine who who were season ticket holders, and I remember they always asking, "What do you think's going to happen?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I'm thinking about this. Like, I'm hoping for the best, but I'm preparing for the worst because you just cannot rest on a team like Baylor. They will score
Yeah.
21 points on you in 1 minute if you stop if you don't keep it up." And I remember looking back at that game from my perspective, at least, and thinking that this was Charlie Taft's masterclass. He had
Oh yeah.
them on skates all day. And it was like the game plan worked exactly like you would need it to, right? I mean, it was jump up on them early, get them to commit a few dumb penalties because they were a little bit undisciplined, and then just keep hammering at them. When you think back to that game, the preparation for it leading up to that, and then seeing that all come together in that moment, what stands out to you?
Man, I call that game Louisville 2.0 because, and I now know, now looking back, all of my buddies from across the Big 12, guys who were centers for Oklahoma, I had everybody calling me from all of the coach film study from that UCF Baylor game. Basically to put it short, I won't get too nerdy here, but this is
You
all
can go
very
nerdy with it with
no, this
us,
is all
man. We
very
love that kind of
intentional. This
stuff.
is all very intentional stuff because this is the birth of the RPO. These are when defenses were really beginning to slant and angle a lot, and pressure a lot, especially in the Big 12. And so, essentially, to put it shortly, both in Louisville and then I was able to kind of extend that trend. But we just were able to figure out how to cut these teams with our zone scheme running play, and create very wide lanes. And
Yeah.
then Baylor specifically, basically we were able, Coach Key, we were able to figure out, and this is something I don't even know if it's publicly shared, so this can be, but we basically knew everything that they were doing before
Yeah.
they were doing it.
I've heard
And
that story
so
before too. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's where it gets fun, where, again, they don't know how to adjust, but based off of how they're lining up, their formations, we know what they're doing. And people forget, but we didn't even have to throw the ball till I think the third or the fourth drive.
Right.
And that was a game where if we had the ball, because they didn't know what adjustments to make, if we got anytime we got the ball, we were scoring it and we knew it. And that's where we put in those variations for RPO. People remember Rennell Hall, those screens that he took for touchdowns.
Yep.
Those are RPO action. That is essentially the triple option. And you're looking at the pitchman when you look at Rennell Hall getting that ball. This is very innovative stuff. This is stuff that at the time had not been seen. And that in combination with the game plan. But I say the Louisville because we were down 21. And so this was a game plan where it's, hey, trust the process, trust the game plan. We're in this environment. It's super hype. And then you could see it in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, grinding them down. And then going into the Baylor game, when you have 30 days and you got myself and Blake and that staff and team, got no chance.
Yeah. I've heard that story before, that that basically what and I don't know who said it because I got it secondhand, but the idea was, they looked at the Oklahoma State film for Baylor because that was the only
Yep,
team they lost to. They lost
exactly.
to Oklahoma State at Boone Pickens, and they were like, you know what?
Yep.
Let's take a look at this and kind of see what we can pick from it, and it worked.
Yep,
And
100%. It was Oklahoma State was kind of they had some key in personnel wise. They did a lot of good stuff with their tight end sets, and then a combination of that, and then our kind of learned experiences, understanding these slant and angle teams. Because right now the starting nose guard for the Chicago Bears is Andrew Billings. Guess who the starting nose guard for Baylor was that game? Andrew Billings.
Andrew
Right.
Billings.
These are great players, and so we had to figure out, how do we contain these and how do we make these guys beat themselves? Because look at me, I'm not blocking that guy. Not straight up anyway. I mean, I'm a scrappy, I'm a street fighter. I'm gonna take everything to my advantage, and we had to.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes that
and
works though.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's when you turn your advantages into advantages, that's what has to happen. I'm not the Texas state champion bench presser, but I can figure out when you're looking like that, where you're going. And,
Yep.
and we were able to, and yeah, those are those games where it's just poetry in motion. I mean, for all you football nerds, just any Friday night, just crack open a beer and watch that game.
Oh man,
Just watch it.
you were so right about talking about like the running lanes, because I remember just watching Storm Johnson
Yeah.
time and time and time again just run through holes you could drive an 18-wheeler through. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, we are really whipping them up front,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I would just you would see everything open up and it would just be white jerseys. Like the green and gold guys would just disappear from the television screen. And I was like, oh man, we are really killing them up front. It's so, yeah. And I think back now, and I wanted to ask you about, this team this year, because the big transition, we talked about the Big 12. UCF struggling right now.
Yeah.
Won the first 3 games, looked like we had an identity with the run game. Lost 5 in a row now, and this weekend there were a bunch of changes in the offensive personnel. If you were going into that locker room, because your career was, you saw that you were high, you experienced the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
If you could go into that locker room and tell the players something, what would that be?
Man, it's tough because I want to come at you with like some like one word cool thing to say.
That's okay,
But
because like
man, it's just work, man.
it's
I
hard.
mean, this is what you sign up for, right? And I think it's tough because when you're in the locker room, you don't have the perspective of life, or we talked about it, but I just got hit by a hurricane. I have 2 little baby girls that are not sleeping in their bed, right? And it's the equivalent of me losing 4 games in a row. And luckily I'm able to think like that now. But for a lot of those guys, you get caught up in the whirlwind of momentums and momentum swings. And this is a downswing. And what you need to do is you need to immediately put the past in the past, and you need to sit where your feet are today, and you need to ask, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? What are the people around me here to do? You need to clarify with your teammates who's on the same page, who's not. That's where it's hard for me to relate in today's age because I'm not sure those dynamics. Same thing like you mentioned, there's been some coaching staff shakeups. So leadership comes from those guys, comes from the coaches, and it comes from the senior leadership. So if it were me, I'm calling a meeting with all of our senior leaders today, yesterday. If I'm those senior leaders, I'm meeting with those coaches and I want to know specifically what's different. Okay, cool. We got a new defensive coach, new guy calling the plays. What does that mean every day? How are we interacting? How are we communicating? How is that, doing to affect the team? And then start small. It starts in practice. I don't care this new play caller gets in and you guys show out that first practice. I don't care if it's Monday or Tuesday, go put that coach in a position to be successful. They're going to be new into this. They're going to be looking for pressure. Each person look to the left and to the right and ask yourself, how can I show up to take a little bit of pressure off that guy? And through that, refine an identity. Refine the guys who are consistently showing up and willing to take on that burden and to show up for each other and rally around what leaders emerge. Every day changes, every week changes. These are young guys going through a lot on and off the field. And so there's a lot of dynamic factors. But what I would challenge all those guys is it's anybody. Anybody can do it. It's not just RJ. It's not just the guys that the fans know about. There's 100 guys in that locker room going in and out every single day. And if you don't think a couple guys with extra intentionality or leadership can change that, then, you're mistaking if you're a player listening to this. So, that would be the challenge that I have for both, the players and the coaches is, it is a true team effort right now. And your job is making yourself, win and making other people better.
Last word on this, and then we'll wrap up by talking about the combine.
Yep.
It was dark at the end of that game on Saturday, and I want to go a different way on it because I wanted to ask you when you see UCF getting ready for these last 4 games. There's a bye week in between it because this year we have 2 bye weeks. What are the bright spots that you see? What are the things that you look at with the team and you're like, hey, look, it looks bad right now, but you know something? We have this. If this works out, guess what? There's always
I'm a lineman, so it all goes back to the run for me. You got number 7, you got any sort of identity to run the ball.
Hmm.
I don't care what you are. You, at this point, with 4 games left in the season, you want to create an identity that people do not want to play UCF, regardless, even if they're just trying for an easy win or whatever. Don't play in the hands of, oh, this fast-paced offense that gets off the field really quickly and you're not making people feel you. As a football player, if you're showing up every day and you're not letting the other person on the other end of the ball feel your presence, and the goal is for them not to want to show up. You think Andrew Billings wanted to show up in that third or fourth quarter? He was begging to be taken out, right? Shout out, him, because he's a stud and you would absolutely kill me. But in that point in time, right, as a player, you got to find that. That is your identity. How can you come together and, play a physical style of football that's going to, enable the respect again of your teammates and of the people across the ball?
Yeah. Tremendous, Joey. I mean, it's been. I still feel like we haven't heard the last of this team yet, and I know it's been. And like I said, it may be dark, but you said there's a silver lining to the dark cloud. But let me ask you about one last thing before we get going with GMTM. You and Shaquem, and you mentioned a couple other friends and teammates are going to be around for this Search for Greatness combine. Tell me about the combine that you guys are going to be working on. What is it? Who do you want to come out? How can people who are interested in it? Who are you looking for?
Yep.
And what do they need to do in order to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And Torian Wilson, our left
Yep.
tackle, Terrence Plummer, the MVP of the Fiesta Bowl on the defensive side, Jordan McCray, my right guard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of these guys are coming back out. I'd mentioned previously my company, GMTM, we're helping Olympics professional organizations find athletes outside of them having to, send scouting departments all over the country. And so our very first event, we've already put hundreds of athletes on these teams and on these rosters. Now we're again trying to make these opportunities more accessible. So any athlete over the age of 18, whether you were a high school guy that didn't get to make it in college, a college guy that didn't make it the full 4 years, or you're just an athlete who's over 18 and sitting there saying to yourself, hey, I train every week, every day, and I got something in the tank. Essentially what this is think of an NFL style combine. But we're calling them Spark Combines. And we are running the brand Spark, and athletes will come out, do a 40, shuttle, vert, powerball, and you will essentially get almost like a Madden rating and a score associated with your performance. And then on the other end, there'll be hundreds of scouts viewing and evaluating this information. The event is completely free. It's at home at UCF in the indoor facility on November 9th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then Jeff will get you a link. There's a link, simple link, and you have to be invited to come show out. And all you have to do is just submit some highlights of, again, high school highlights, any highlights that you have, share them away. And then we're sending out invites over the next 10 days to close it out. We already have athletes lined up and committed to come. So put your name in the hat and check out gmtm.com. And if you're an athlete, this is a place where you're going to be able to find diverse sporting opportunities, whether it's, like you said, that bobsled athlete or, changing a tire in pit crew, right? All of these diverse type of things, working with motorsports. These are all the type of people that are on our platform looking for athletes. And this is where the future of sports is going to continue to go. So jump on and come out November 9th, and it's going to be exciting, to do it at home, but this is going to, represent kind of a new era of opportunities for athletes in that age group.
GMTM.com is the website. The more I read about it, the more excited I get about it and how cool this is, because, I think you believe the same thing. It's easy for us to get caught up in all the big sports, right? Football, basketball, baseball, anything else. But like, sports are for everyone. And there are so many great opportunities to do cool things and achieve something. And I think this is really, really cool. Shaquem's going to be there. We're going to be talking to him tomorrow. You mentioned all the other guys. Terrence Palmer is going to be there. Terrence, I saw him not too long ago. He was doing some work with the Guardians, the Orlando Guardians. I was working with them too, and Yeah, this is going to be pretty cool. November 9th at UCF's campus. Go to gmtm.com for details. Joey Grant, number 55, in the middle for your UCF Knights. Lake Brantley graduate and two-time conference champ at UCF. Joey, so good to see you. Congratulations on all the work you've done. I know that, and like you mentioned, the stuff with the storm, I'm glad you and yours are okay. I know it's been rough out there, but dude, keep doing what you're doing, and anything we can do to help support you, anything at all, let us know. We're happy to have you on, and it's good to see you again and talk to you again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure talking about UCF and opportunities for athletes, and that's what I'm about. And all you Knight fans, stay positive, stay together. There will be brighter days ahead, and for people on the team listening in, let's just go get that next win. And that's how the work starts. So thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate your time.